thinking about the connections between the founder of the Gothic style and the Templars. So I drew a line in Google Earth from the central entry of Bourges Cathedral to the entry of Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland. So what? You can draw a line between any 2 points. But you won't believe what the line passes directly over in London, the headquarters of the United Grand Freemasonic Lodge of England. The United Grand Lodge of England is the main governing body of Freemasonry within England, Wales, and much of the former British Empire. The building is on Great Queen Street, no less. UGLY, as the organization is known, seems to be a fitting acronym for its Ugly as Sin container, historically third on the site since Masonic meetings first started here in 1775, a year before the American Revolution. Perhaps some of America's Masonic founding fathers planned the revolution here. I'm not sure. When the Templars were around, they controlled a sizable district less than half a mile away in the city of London. The temple includes Temple Church, the adjacent Middle and Outer Temples, and a host of related buildings. The Templars themselves said they designed the round portion of Temple Church after the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, which also features a rotunda. Perhaps politics motivated them to claim Christian provenance for their temple. Longtime esoteric researcher John Smout says a better geometric comparison is between Temple Church and the Dome of the Rock, which seems to have a high degree of correlation with the round church's ground plan. This makes more sense to me, as the Templars did take their name from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Case in point, they were never known as the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. Whichever building was ultimately their template, the Templar influence was so powerful that they actually got the Patriarch of Jerusalem to come to London and consecrate Temple Church in 1185. Temple Church was brought to the public's attention in the Da Vinci Code, where it was the scene of a shootout amidst marble effigies of medieval knights. The temple served at times as the residence of kings and representatives of the Pope, while Temple Church itself served as a depository bank. I believe Smout's geometric analysis of Temple Church is right on the money, if you'll pardon the pun. The temple plan is laid out with triangles and squares, which we know from studying Chartres Cathedral have hidden significance. Triangles and squares are arranged in such a way as to depict 3 cubes. The symbolism of 3 cubes is something we've seen before in the George Washington Masonic National Memorial. After the Great Fire of London in 1666, Sir Christopher Wren was chosen to redesign St. Paul's Cathedral. He oriented St. Paul's in line with the axis of Temple Church. Extending beyond St. Paul's, we see the alignment continues to the Bank of England. The bank was chartered in 1694 during the construction of Wren's Cathedral. More than just a local branch, the Bank of England is the central bank of the whole of the United Kingdom, and is the model on which most countries' modern central banks are based. The Bank of England is literally the mother of all banks. Recall how the Templars' meteoric rise in power came in part by becoming the first transnational bank, and how Temple Church itself acted as a bank, whilst housing both royals and papal representatives. By tracing the alignment from Temple Church to the Bank of England through St. Paul's Cathedral, we draw a connection between Templars, the modern banking system, and the Church, 3 powerful bedfellows. The Bank of England presides over a street pyramid in the heart of the City of London. The symbolism of the bank over a pyramid suggests a hidden power relationship, analogous to the House of the Temple presiding over the Pyramid of Washington, D.C. After all, pyramids are clear symbols of hierarchy, and one can read it as control from the top down. The base of the pyramid contains the London Stone, said to be the rock from which all distances in the United Kingdom were measured. The Romans laid this foundation stone in London, just as they had done earlier with the Umbilicus Urbis Romae. You could say this pyramid was built on a rock-solid Roman foundation. Some of the greatest secrets are hidden in plain sight. Isn't that strange? I mean, if you ran a secret society, why painstakingly encrypt your greatest truths in alignments, city plans, and in architecture? I would have thought there were better ways of keeping secrets. There must be some kind of power gained or maintained by hiding these truths out in the open where many can see, but few understand. Sir Christopher Wren was a brilliant mathematician, astronomer, geometer, and architect. He was an enlightened man who clearly excelled in the 7 liberal arts. St. Paul's Cathedral is the most important building of Wren's architectural career. Stephen Skinner pointed out in his book Sacred Geometry that the length of St. Paul's, including its entrance steps, measures 555 feet, and that this distance is equal to the height of the Washington Monument. Recall how triple sixes and fives are encoded in this singular measure, as 6,660 inches equals 555 feet. St. Paul's length therefore symbolizes the relationship between macrocosm and microcosm. The distance from the floor of the cathedral to the top of the cross on its dome is 365 feet, matching the height and symbolism of the Sun Tower at Chartres. St. Paul's is one of the few places we're not surprised to see the English foot used as the unit of measure. Trying to decipher London from another angle, I was looking at Buckingham Palace and wondering about the perfectly straight axis called the Mall in front of it. Wanting to trace where this obvious gesture leads, I need to ask, where does the royal axis go? It appears that the Mall leads to the Admiralty Arch, but then the axis seems to fade away in the confusion of buildings along the Strand. Or does it? Tracing the axis beginning at Buckingham Palace, passing over the Victoria Memorial, traveling along the Mall, going under the Admiralty Arch and through the buildings on the Strand, the axis arrives precisely at Temple Bar. Temple Bar was a gate designed by Sir Christopher Wren to ceremonially bar access to the City of London. It got the name Temple from being directly in front of the Templar compound. The temple was taken over by the Inns of Court after the Templars were ousted in 1307. The Middle Temple and Outer Temple are 2 of the Inns of Court to which all barristers in England must today belong. In fact, the phrase the bar, meaning the legal profession as a whole, can be traced back to Temple Bar. Wren's Gate is no longer there, but tradition and the law remain. Traditionally, the Lord Mayor would offer the sword of state to the Queen when she passed through the gate as a token of loyalty. It is a little-known legal fact that the monarch may not enter the City of London without the permission of the Lord Mayor of London. What's up with that? I always thought the Queen was the one in charge. You might be surprised to learn that the Lord Mayor is not the Mayor of London, nor is the City of London the same as Greater London. Confused? The law can do that. The person the Queen bows to is the Lord Mayor of London. He's the guy who runs the City of London Corporation, a tiny private jurisdiction that covers only about 1 square mile. The wealthiest square mile on earth, as it's often referred to, is the sovereign state within Greater London, whose boundary closely follows the ancient Roman walls of Londinium. In Isaac Newton's day, there were more than 200,000 souls living within the square mile, but now that figure is down to less than 10,000. Today, the tiny city of London has become a leading center of global finance. Other powerful sovereign cities within cities that come to mind are, of course, the United Nations headquarters and Vatican City.